yourself. I just wanted to record this video this morning to just say hello, and I hope that you are all doing well and that you are coping okay with studying from home. I know it's not going to be as easy as when you were at school, but I do hope that you are working through your English essay and the practice response for the castle. What I want to talk about specifically today is planning your essay. I did talk about this briefly last Monday, but there were many of you who weren't there, and I wanted to just reiterate some of those points and to why we are asking you to write a practice essay at this point in the term, and why we might be asking you to plan a number of responses to those series of essay questions that were posted on Edmodo. So in terms of essay planning, the reason why we emphasize to you to plan at least 3 or 4 responses to different essay questions, and to why we get you to write, at least one essay, is because it comes down to the dexterity of your response. So dexterity is how you're able to manipulate your knowledge and to modify how you respond to the module based on the question that's given on the day. So if you just go in there with what you have written for your assessment, and you write the exact same thing in the exam, that's not going to be as effective as what it should be. So you need to be able to think about what you need to know, what you need to understand, and also interpreting the question on the day so that you're addressing that question and you're addressing the criteria that you're going to be marked upon on that day. So what is up on Edmodo is a series of 4 steps, which you're probably familiar with if you have been planning a response and in an exam for some time. But if this is new to you or you're not quite sure, this might help you work through that. So essentially, you have 40 minutes writing time in an exam per response. So you need to be able to think about how you can get that process of planning down to about 1 to 2 minutes. What we've suggested is you start maybe giving yourself 15 minutes and then gradually reducing the time. So if you're going to write 3 or 4 plans for your essays, the first one you could give yourself a bit more time, and then as you go through the second one, you give yourself less, the third even less, and then the fourth you're hoping to get that down to 1 to 2 minutes. And then that will hopefully give you some experience as to how you can maybe modify and specifically choose how you're going to respond to a question based on what it is asking. So the main thing to do when planning your essay is to identify the keywords and phrases. So it can be useful to have a highlighter in an exam so that you can highlight that, but certainly in your reading time, because you have 10 minutes reading time and you are only really looking at 3 questions, you have plenty of time to sit there and think about what your response might be. So that means when it comes to writing time, you really should have a few things at the forefront of your mind that you can then put into your response. So that's identifying any keywords, any key phrases that will then help you target what you need to respond to and how you're going to then write your thesis and what particular evidence you're going to incorporate. So then after you've kind of addressed that, you need to move on to your thesis. Now, again, you're not writing this out in full, but it's just getting you to think about what are the key ideas or themes or kind of topics you want to address and put forward in your essay. So what is your argument and what is kind of driving it? How are you responding to that question, and what do you think the key elements are? And once you've thought about that, then you move on to organizing the topics of your paragraph. So I'd say at least 3 key different ideas that would then become the basis of your paragraphs, but they need to be very clear, explicit, different topics that each paragraph is going to address, so that you're really exploring all angles of the question. Then once you've thought about what your paragraphs will be, then you can start to think about the evidence. So if we're talking about the castle and language, culture, and identity, you would then be thinking about what key ideas have we studied that you could refer to, what key scenes can you talk about. You need to think about your explanations, what film techniques, what language techniques, any devices that have been used within the film to add meaning and add that effect. Now, again, if you're doing this in 15 minutes, you would probably write some dot points for each of these steps. You would really kind of space it out. But then as you move to shorten it down, again, you probably would shorten it to be a couple of words, a couple of phrases for each thing, so that when you get into the writing time and you're actually writing your response, that you have something to look at. So instead of staring off into space or looking out the window, you can then go back to your plan and think, okay, I've done this, have I done this, and it's really getting you to think about not only the structure of your overall essay, but also the structure of your paragraph. So are you kind of following that teal structure where you have a clear topic sentence, you explain and go into detail as to what that means and how that links to the question. You're then going in to think about the evidence that you're providing, where you talk about the devices, you give your quotes or examples, and then you explain the effect and how they do that. So it really helps you be planning and thinking about that. Whereas if you don't do planning and you don't really think about it, sometimes you might tend to waffle on, or you might find that you lose track, or you're not putting enough evidence or analysis into your response. So the other thing I wanted to just go through, obviously, is your essay and the different questions. So looking at, this is what was put on Edmodo. Obviously, you can choose 3 or 4 of these questions in order to answer, to create some essay planning and a response. And obviously, we want you to submit the plans for those, so how you've gone about it, so that we can give you some feedback on what you have selected. We can go through this process that you have and think about what you might need to add or what you could think about. And obviously, then writing that essay as a final point is going to be it. But with any HSC exam preparation, the more practice essays you write, the more responses that you write, the easier it is going to be on the day, because you're making yourself familiar with a range of different ideas. If we bring it back to that dexterity, it's really showing how you're then able to take what you have learned and manipulate that information depending on the question that is provided. So the more you practice your responses, the more easily you're going to be able to respond to a question on the day. And then obviously receiving any feedback on those responses and those drafts that you have written means that you then improve significantly with each attempt. And that also helps you feel more confident. It reduces that stress and anxiety in an exam situation, and it can help you to feel more confident and well-rounded in terms of your knowledge of this topic. So to finish up, again, make sure that if you have any questions or there's anything that you're not sure about, to please post a question on Edmodo, because it may help somebody else. But again, if you want to, you can email myself or Miss Price. So I will be making a couple more of these videos as we go along. This was the first try, so hopefully you enjoyed it. And yes, looking forward to interacting with you on Edmodo. So enjoy.